Trying to find the right place to move to in Denver can be a difficult choice, especially if you're considering moving to Colorado compared to other parts of the country. But even then, there are so many suburbs of Denver. How do you know which one is the right one? You want to make sure you make the right decision, and you definitely don't want to make the wrong one, especially figuring that out after you've moved. That's never a fun experience. Well, before you even get there, let's ask this question. Should I move to the northern suburbs or the southern suburbs of Denver? Is one better than the other? Or are they more or less the same? Is there even a difference? Yes, and we have to talk about it. So what we're gonna do is run through a few different categories and see which section of Denver is better. We may fixate on one or two suburbs, depending on how well they provide for the category. But the overall intent is to get a look at the northern and southern suburbs of Denver as a whole. So let's compare our first category, location. Right off the bat, if we look at a map of Denver, we can see that the location of suburbs both on the northern and southern side can be split into two categories. Those within the highway boundaries and those outside of them. You can see that the greater Denver area is enveloped by a highway system known as 470, E470, and Northwest Parkway, all connected that run from the southern edge of Golden all the way around the eastern side of the city and stops just south of Boulder, right by Route 36. Although it's not necessarily an intentional border, I see it as the marker between the suburbs that are much more suburban aesthetically and then those suburbs that blend suburban living with rural living. And when you go and visit these locations, it's quite obvious. Here's what I mean. The suburbs that are on either side of the city within these boundaries will more or less look the same. There is going to be a subtle environmental shift in the aesthetic of southern suburbs versus northern suburbs, but you're still close enough to the city that being on either side doesn't really feel like that much of a difference from a location perspective. In other categories, it's going to be more apparent, and I'll get to that. But when we go outside these boundaries, it becomes way more obvious. We're still technically within the suburbs of Denver, even though environmentally, it feels like we've completely left the greater city area. On either side, you're going to find suburbs way less developed and more integrated with the surrounding rural environment. On the southern side, once you get outside of the boundaries, the environment is more mountainous, especially as you're running along I-25. You have suburbs like Castle Pines and Castle Rock down here, but given this environment, it's going to be a lot of open grassland mixed with the beginnings of the Rockies. And let's be honest, it's unbelievably beautiful. But choosing to live here, you're going to have to be a bit picky on your spot. It is less developed, especially compared to the northern side, which first off, the environment leans much more agricultural. Obviously, you can see that it's way less mountainous here. There's a clear delineation between the beginnings of the Front Range and the Colorado Plains. And on top of this, there's a city just northwest of Denver, and that's Boulder, which has intentionally capitalized on preserving the aesthetic of the country to maintain its urban environment and yet still be surrounded by beautiful rural living. That's Boulder County for you. Now, the suburbs up here in the north are going to be much more developed than the south. There's going to be more options to choose from and more things to do, which I'll cover next. So unless you're unaware, Colorado, especially along the Front Range, has a big outdoor culture. People here love to hike, bike, camp, ski and snowboard, or basically just exist outside. If that's not your style per se, that's okay. It can still be a great place to live. But just be aware that's what a lot of people do here. And with these mountains in your backyard, it's understandable why. But what will play heavily into this category of outdoor activities is going to be the surrounding environment, like in the section I just mentioned. Now, this one might be tricky because, to be honest, there's a ton to do in Colorado, just in general. And we're not necessarily going to be only focusing on whether each side of the city offers you more things to do, but also just an easier ability to go and do them, especially within the suburbs and close to the suburbs. But if you're living really close to Denver, as with any city, you are at the mercy of the parks and recreational opportunities provided to you by the suburb. These are going to be intentional to the design of the town. I would argue they're more or less the same on either side. However, I do have to lean more towards the south, more so because geographically speaking, places like City Park, the Denver Zoo, Washington Park, Cherry Creek State Park, and the like are all in the southern half. So closer to the city within these highway boundaries we've talked about, I'm gonna lead towards the south having the better option. However, if we look outside of these boundaries, I'm gonna go with the north. Not only because Boulder is there, which if we're being honest, is an incredible location with an absolutely massive amount of things to do, but it's also due to the presence of more suburbs in the north, like I just mentioned, because that means that there's gonna be more opportunities for you. It's going to be easier to go and do them. For example, Boulder County is a highly sought after destination, not just to live, but to go and visit. And the ability for you to get into the mountains to hike some of the 12,000 and 13,000 footers is easy. Plus, places like Estes Park, Colorado is only about 45 minutes away. So it's also relatively easy to get off into the mountains. That's not to say that there aren't outdoor opportunities in the south. There absolutely are. There could probably be a 30-minute plus video alone listing all the things you can do in Colorado and all the places you can visit. But in the south, I'm gonna argue there's not as much of a variety of things to do, especially if you're looking at it from a suburb perspective. Sure, there's gonna be hiking opportunities, but if we compare it to a place like Boulder County, you not only have endless hiking to do, but also gravel biking and road biking, horseback riding, hot air ballooning, skydiving, tubing, and of course more laid back outdoor activities like spending a day at the beach, maybe doing some of the Boulder County brew tours and the like. Those are a bit specific, but to drive the point home here of why the north wins over the south is tied to the fact that it's more built up, which sounds a bit counterintuitive, but if there's more built up suburbs, there's going to be more intentionally designed opportunities and spots for the residents, and thus there's more variation at your fingertips to explore. So now on the topic of schools and education, we're gonna keep this relatively simple because there are several school districts in the Denver area. So instead of going through every single one and attempting to analyze each component, let's defer to a third party and see out of the top 5 school districts in the Denver area, which side of the city has more. So in the north, there are 2 school districts that make the top 5 list. They are the Boulder Valley School District and the St. Vrain Valley School District. The former has been ranked the #1 best school district in the greater Denver area, also the #2 best school district in the entire state of Colorado, and the latter has been ranked the #5 best school district in the Denver area. Now, something to mention though is that both of these districts really sit on the far edge of Denver's northern suburbs. St. Vrain especially marks the northernmost edge of all the Denver suburbs. And Boulder Valley incorporates quite a few towns in the Front Range to the west that aren't necessarily part of the greater Denver area. However, it does have some of its district in other northern suburbs like Louisville and Broomfield, a bit closer to the city. Now, if we look at the south, basic math will tell us that it has 3 school districts in the top 5. They are the Cherry Creek School District, coming in at #2, the Littleton Public School District at #3, and the Douglas County School District at #4. For both the Cherry Creek and the Littleton School Districts, these 2 sit in the immediate Denver area, just north of that highway boundary we were talking about, encompassing the south and southeastern sides of the Denver area. And then for Douglas County, this district covers the entire area of the southern suburbs past this boundary, and about halfway down to Colorado Springs too, with most of the higher ranking schools closer to Denver. So it's pretty simple here. Statistically speaking, 60% of the best school districts in the Denver area are found in the south. Thus, it wins in this category. But I'll include a link to the districts below. The reason being is because there's a lot of information here, too difficult to fully unpack in this video, but it's definitely worth the research, especially if you're now gonna try to compare specific districts to each other. I definitely recommend looking at it. Okay, let's wrap up this comparison with the cost of living. So let's first look at the areas closest to Denver. So we do have to break this up into 2 sections, which are comparing the suburbs north and south within these highway boundaries, and then comparing the suburbs outside of the boundaries. So let's look at the suburbs close to Denver first. For single family homes, the median price of suburbs in northern Denver is $615,000, while in southern Denver, the median is just shy of $695,000. If we look at townhomes and condos, well, interestingly, the most recent month, we have prices that are identical at $410,000. However, as you can see from the graph, properties in the north have been statistically higher than in the south. But before we get conclusive here, let's take a look at price per square foot. So for single family properties, the median price per square foot in northern suburbs is $268 compared to the southern median of $316. That means that the estimated median size of homes in the north are 2,294 square feet, while in the south, the median estimated size of properties is 2,199 square feet. So single family properties in the north are not only $80,000 more affordable, but also about 100 square feet larger. But now, if we look at townhomes and condos, the median price per square foot in the north is $303, while the median price in the south is $324, which means the estimated median size of properties in the north is 1,353 square feet, compared to 1,265 square feet in the south. So for right now, townhomes and condos are about the same price regardless of location, but the size of these properties in the north is just about 100 square feet larger. Now that was for properties located close to Denver, within these boundaries we talked about. But what about the suburbs on the outside? You'll find this interesting. So for single family properties, the median price falls at $825,000 for suburbs in the north and $750,000 in the south. For townhomes and condos, the median price is $520,000 in the north and $513,000 in the south. But looking at size now, the median price per square foot for single family homes in the north is $305 compared to $235 in the south, which means the estimated median size of properties in the north is 2,704 square feet compared to 3,191 square feet in the south. Now, if we look at townhomes and condos, the median price per square foot is $339 in the north versus $291 in the south. So the estimated median size of properties here is 1,533 square feet in the north compared to 1,762 square feet in the south. Much more different than the suburbs closer to Denver. Not only are the properties north of Denver more expensive, they are also technically smaller. Now, part of the argument here is the price increases as a result of location. And a lot of these northern properties are located in and around Boulder, which is a city that definitely stands out location-wise, is highly desired, and more or less outperforms anything found in the south. But interestingly enough, the properties in the south are also newer in construction, and as a result, larger too. So if you're looking for suburbs outside of Denver, the south will give you the best bang for your buck. So it's clear here either side of Denver has its pros and cons. Which side won in your mind? Across several different categories, it's not easy picking a clear winner. Or is it just too complicated a question to pick a clear winner? If that's the case, I recommend checking out some more videos I have on the suburbs of Denver. These will definitely provide some more information for you to help you make that decision. I think you'll find it helpful. This is Life on the Front Range. I'll see you there.